Narrator of this nostalgic walk through West Jefferson, Ohio, March 1938. I'm just going to try to point out places and things that will jog your memory as we take this walk through West Jefferson. I graduated in the class of 1951. I was born in West Jefferson in 1933. That makes me a rare thing in West Jefferson. I'm a native. And here we see the PTA officers in 38. Mrs. Gillivan, Mrs. Argenbright, Mrs. Gregg, and Mrs. Biggert. There's R.I. Blauser. He's one of the photographers along with Dr. Hurt. And here are the ladies who were officers then and bring you the... There's Mrs. Gillivan, Mrs. Biggert, Mrs. Lem Gregg. One thing I notice as I do this, you see reflections in the glass a lot. Now there's a train. We're looking west from the top of the town hall. You see the canning factory silos. As you swing around farther, you'll see the old grain elevator. There's the buildings directly behind the firehouse. And there's the grain elevator. As many of you know, it burned down in 1988. I've walked out that road many times. That's the Middle Pike. Now we're looking northeast to the bridge over Little Darby, the railroad bridge. We'll swing back to the north, and again we'll pick up Murray's elevator. Now this is a view looking east on Route 40. Now we're swinging back looking to buildings on the south side of town. And there's the Baptist Church, which is across from the town hall. There's the Methodist Church. There's the grade school. Out in the distance, we see the high school building. And, of course, there's the Township Hall. And there's a guy down there saying, "What are you doing up on top of the building taking pictures?" I don't know the significance of these buses. They seem to be in town that day. And we'll see one of the last interurban cars to go through West Jefferson as it was discontinued sometime along 3839. There's R.I. Blauser coming out, trying to make like a bus driver. There's a more popular form of transportation. And I believe this is Finley Strothers. And there's the semi-truck of its day. When we get later in the 52 films, you'll see that that's just a spattering of traffic compared to what it was like before the freeway. Those of you in the class of 1938 will get a chance to look at yourselves here 50 years ago as you're enjoying a reunion, many of you at the introduction of this film. We're having it for the first time at your 50th alumni reunion. There's the interurban cars. There's the bus station, stood on the north side of Main Street. Now we're down next to the drugstore, and there's Patty Gillivan's Hardware. Those of you who are newer in town, that's where Culp and Parsons' offices are today. There's the West Jefferson Building and Loan, which stood across the street. You notice the little house in the front window, that has a significance. It's the house they loan money on, and there's Lefty Culp. There's, I believe that's Earl Huffman. I'd seemed to have an awful lot of grocery stores in those days. Mr. Smith. There's Earl Huffman. There's Malot's drugstore. There's Sonny Malott, Reverend Sonny Malott. There's Beth going into the store. Don't know who the lady is with her. Remember the black marble then before the full glass. There's Bige Biggert. There's the cream station. There's Ernie Thomas, who ran the cream station in 1938. Ernie's got a can of milk there. Looks like that's Dorothy Siebold. He almost fell down with his can of milk. We were noticing the suicide doors on the old automobile, opened in the front. Now we come up North Walnut. There's Murray's elevator. And lumberyard, I guess I should add. And look at that, what would the EPA say if they could see that train coming by today? The steam engines who went through regularly. There's John Murray of John Murray Lumber and Grain. There's Cletus. We swing across the street to the railroad depot. You can see the other building on top of the hill where the freight was dropped off, brought down the hill daily. And there's Paul Lafferty, who was with Murray Lumber and Grain for many, many years. We come back uptown to the Red and White store, and here I am in '88 telling you it's one of the two businesses that is still in business. There's Alan Patterson, he runs it today. There's Ella Patterson, his sister. And there's Ben Britton, who owned it in 1938. We move on down the street, and there's Charlie Keener trying to get a fancy sign ready for the movie, but he didn't make it. So we've got the old C.F. Keener sign, the clothing store, and there's Charlie. There's Wilbur McCoy, his right-hand man, coming out to say hi to us. Now we're down to R.I. Blauser Rugs and Stoves, and of course that's the old R.I. Blauser building. That's Guy out there directing traffic. Guy's going to show off here in a minute the latest in delivery machinery for Blauser's Furniture in West Jefferson. Now there's Harry Coe's. It's a block off of Main Street on the north side of town. He had an implement store there, ran an auction. And there's Harry as we all remember him. There's Mr. Shoemaker of the West Jefferson Star and his ace printer, Howard McKinley. There's Dr. Hurt, who also took a lot of these pictures, and there's Dr. Gibney, the dentist. Dr. J. William Hurt, physician, X-ray, and then right below it, Dr. Gibney. Now we move on down Main Street, and we come to Mark Miller's Ford Garage. Brand new 38 Ford probably out there in front. And a guy that told me he sold more Fords than anybody in West Jefferson. See him coming out there. There's Mo Martin. Not Mo Martin. Mark Miller. There's Glenn Webb. This man we didn't know. And there's Ches Strothers. There's the 38 Ford. Mark Miller there. There's Joe Wolbert. Had the tire store. There's Cease Deach coming out and saying hi to the cameras. That was Bill Ray there. Johnny King. Ed Arganbright. And Byron Johnson. Byron doing what he does best. There he is again. You try to look in the windows of the stores and you get the reflection of the store across the street. There's the electric shop. And across the street from it was the vanity shop, Mrs. Richardson. Of course, there's the Blauser Funeral Home. Across the street, Ralph Parsons. And Ralph Parsons, of course, still in business in 1988, one of the two that I can think of that still under the same management as it was in the 1938. And there's Ralph, better known as Beefy. There's the Sinclair station. There comes another train, a little less smoke on this train. There's the Clark's Bakery truck, and it's parked down in front of Bill Strohsnyder's at the intersection of 142 and Route 40, just under the viaduct. There's Bill out there taking control. Davis Restaurant. Look at those prices, folks. Roast pork and dressing, 40 cents. I guess you know you won't see that in any more pictures in the next 50 years. There's the Iceman cometh. A familiar scene in 1938. The Iceman, they tell me, was Pete Merrick. I like the dump on the truck there. You see the man turning the crank, unloading coal, getting ready for winter. Jaeger Soda Grill, a familiar place on Main Street in 38. And there's Dr. Sheets' office. There's Mrs. Sheets going into the office. Across the street, or on down the street, I mean, is John Baber's Plymouth DeSoto Garage. There comes John right up the sidewalk, past the post office where it is now barber shop and the Masonic Lodge. There's John Baber, Dave Geyer, Finley Struthers. That's Dave there. Here's Struthers' garage. There's Finley. And there's Don Struthers. Now we move down the east end of town, and the guy in the jodhpurs there is Emmett Young, showing off his new outdoor hoist. If you think he's not proud of that, just wait till you see this smile in a minute. There's Emmett and his able-bodied right-hand man, Ray Watson. There's Bernard Chesty Smith. Now we come down to the post office. There's Spence Hockenberry and Mrs. McCarty and Mrs. Robinson. And there's Al Hockenberry, Jim Hockenberry, Raleigh Rackham, in front of the meat market. There's Jim Timmons, in front of Timmons Dairy Products. There's Ben with his arm in a cast. And there's a few of the cows. I guess they tell me from the way they were trying to figure out the roll of the hills that those cows are out on the Roberts farm, which is now where Westwood Addition is. I was not able to get the name of any of the cows. There's one of the more illustrious alumni, a man that we've missed for the last 2 or 3 years, Mr. Earl Gregg. We moved clear on down to the east end of town now to the Texaco station. It still is there, and it's still a filling station. At that time, Bob Deach was the delivery man. There's Bob. And there's Gus Deach. This gentleman, we didn't pick up his name. We weren't able to find it. There's Nellie Byerly and Francis Zane in front of the dime store. Nellie Byerly Wetzel and Francis Zane Martin. We all figure there's Brody Rader in front of Rader's Funeral Home. And his assistant at that time, Marv Shepard. Then we come off back to Main Street. There's Conk Jackson and Roy Gorham. I'll tell you who those fellows on the right were in just a minute when we get a close-up. Chevrolet. There's the old Chevrolet bow tie 50 years ago. There's Wayne Baker, Jack Snyder, Conk Jackson, and Roy Gorham. There are the two bridges going over Route 40. And there's the interurban trestle. This bridge is the bridge over the Taylor Blair Road. And then we move right down real quick to Georgesville to the twin bridges over Big and Little Darby. And there's the railroad bridge over the joint. Now this is the Taylor Blair Bridge here. And in 1952, a semi breaks through that bridge and makes it necessary to build a new bridge. But there it is in 1938. That's right down by the waterworks. We go out to the grade school. There's Frank Wise, who was the janitor of the grade school. Go on up to the high school then. I believe that's Mr. Corey going into the VOAG in the shop area in the high school. I don't know who that is running the soft. Somebody will hold up 4.5 fingers. We'll probably recognize him. This is Don Stickle, I think. His FFA jacket on in there. Looks like he's building a doghouse. There's Mr. C.E. Rhodes, who was the VOAG teacher at that time. Move right up to the orchestra under the direction of Mr. Brobst. I believe that's Maxine Huffman Richardson playing the piano. Clell Hockenberry. Martha Pearl Stroh-Snyder Engel. Had a long chat today, but we couldn't figure out who some of these other instrument players were. Now here are many clubs, and you can see people, particularly you folks in the 38, 39 classes. That was Tritchew leading them in. There's Mr. Corey and another group of young ladies. I won't mention any of the young ladies' names because I'd probably get them wrong, although there are 2 or 3 in there that I do recognize. I'll drop a name here or there, and then you can say, oh, I remember so-and-so was in that class also. The young lady in the front row in the plaid skirt and the sweater is my sister Annette. I guess I can recognize her because she was around home a lot. My brother Jim, and I see Virginia Schilling Long on the right there. There's one of the Longs there in the back row. There's the basketball team, 1938. There's Tritchew out in front. He coached them all. That's a file there on the left. That's Roger, I believe. Here's the football team, and believe it or not, the voice of the Rough Riders is lost. 30 years, but all the time I did the announcing, they had on numbers. But Tritchew's easily spotted because he's built like a fire plug, the coach back there, who started an era of football. This team went on in the next 3 years to win only lose only one ball game in 3 years. 2 undefeated, untied records, starting an era of football at West Jefferson that still remains. There's the FFA. I can see Bob Horton there. Pick out others, I'm sure. Then we go down to, I believe that's Pauline Dorn's art class. Here's the office. W.B. Corey. There's his secretary typing away. Here's the teaching staff, and I think I've got about most of these. That's Tritchu and Joe Heston coming out first. And then there's Mrs. Heffron and Mrs. Smith. There's a Mrs. Mitchell, a Mrs. Reynolds, Lucy Booth. There's Lucy again. Mrs. Heffron, there's Tritchu. And that's Mr. Rhodes. There's Herb Kell and Mr. Corey. Joe Heston again. And that's Mr. Rhodes. And here are the kids coming out of school, and you can just sit back, relax, and see if you can pick you out. I can spot a few people there that I'm sure everybody in this room can say, I remember this one or that one. That looks like maybe the Kyle twins going there. They just keep coming out of the high school. There's Beefy Hunter. Bill Seabold wanted to make sure everybody signed, so he went around and came out twice. I believe that was John Young was the janitor holding the door open. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Some other time. There's the Catholic Church. Baptist Church. We go back to the Baptist Church and the minister and his wife, and then there's the Methodist Church. 16 years old. It was built in 1922. This is 1938 pictures. The church had previously used what became the Orient Theater, and then built a new church, and the Orient Theater became a part of West Jefferson's locale and history. Some other churches in the area. Permanent residence needs no explanation. Only thing I say is, as the camera swings around to the east, we see the Jefferson Gardens dance hall, which I'm sure many of us have a lot of memories of. And that "of" is a preposition, which is a word you never end a sentence with. I told you I graduated West Jefferson. I know my grammar. There's the Darby Grange Hall. The water tower, you notice there's not many houses around there then. There's the Township Hall, which we know today as Galbraith Hall. There's the Town Hall, the Opera House, and at this time the renovation had not been done and the third story had not been removed. That's Monk Stanley on the street department there. There's Dick Merriman. There's Dick and his able assistants in law enforcement, Millard Clark and Happy Neighborgall. The mayor at that time was Major Seaman. There comes Frank Olney walking down the street. Frank built a lot of houses around here in those days. And here's the old fire engine, and of course it was brand new in 1938. They were real proud of it. Howard McKinley. And Ernie Thomas showing off the hoses. There they are, close up after they've been playing with the new truck. We go out to B School. Here come the kids out of B School. So you remember, if you were in B School in 38, you're probably in that picture. They said they thought Lucille Arganbright was out there helping let kids out of school, and we'll name some of the other teachers as we get a chance. There's Mary Holloway. There's Miss Trafser. There's Chester Kelso, Mary Holloway, Miss Trafser. There's Carl Geyer, Eldon Flugie, Jim Stoner. Now we go to the Boy Scouts. I think before Gillivan School, I don't know. Yep, there's the Boy Scouts. 1938, I can see Beefy again. There's the Longs. There's Bob Reckham, Junior Sheenus. They pan them again. There's Dick Kennard, believe. There's Reckham, my brother Dale, Sheenus. I guess you know them as you picked them out there. If you're in there, you'll know it. There's some ladies playing on the swings up at Gillivan School, and here come the kids out. Boy, camera really slowed them down in those days. I don't think anything slows them down today. They see a camera today, they start grinning and waving. I thought that was Garnet Lamb. Not sure about that. There's A School. The B School has been renovated and is used by the Board of Education in West Jefferson, and that's where their offices are. A School is now a residence, as is the school at Gillivan, for those of you who haven't kept up with the times. Betty Culp was the teacher at B School, or at the A School, and Ed Cochran was the janitor. There's L.C. Dick, a longtime member of the Board of Education in West Jefferson. Walter Byerly. Some other people here that you may know. That's Bob Wise, they tell me. Kind of looks like it. There's Ben Timmons, still got that arm in a sling. You could see the Orient Theater there in the background. There's three guys on a motorcycle. That's John King, Byron Johnson, and Bill Ray. These ladies hurrying to get out of the camera shot. Marge Young, Carl Byerly, There's Sally Woodard and Ann Peacemaker, I think. It's either Ann or it's Sue Arganbright, Martha Sue. There's Mr. Squires, and there's John Morgan. And then a man by the name of Squires, they tell me. There's Margaret Fry and her brother Dan. P.B. Miller. Sam Baber. Dave Smith. Albert Clark. There's a couple of other fellows. There's Lem Gregg and his daughter. There's Doc Chambers. And there's Elmer Jester. And he says good night, and as they say good night, we'll move right on into the couple decades to 1952. As you can read there, this is a pictorial picture of West Jefferson in 1952. We'll visit a lot of those areas that we were there, where we were there before. A lot of the stores are the same, a lot of people are the same, but there's new folks that have moved in. Got a new photographer now. Ralph Parsons is helping out. There's some folks I think we all know. Joe and Lil. Ralph and Bessie, the Ellingers, Blanche and Raymond Deacon, and Guy Blauser. "80 years old and down comes the grade school." I think the thing that I marvel at today is that grand and glorious old buildings that were so full of bricks and everything else was torn down and hauled away in a little two-wheeled trailer. All of it done by hand. They didn't have any big machinery to tear it down with. There's John Sheenus tearing it up, and there's Etta Sheenus. John and Etta tore it down, and you see her thrown on the wagon, and most of that school building, three-story building, was hauled away behind that blue Jeep and a little two-wheel trailer. We visit the churches. There's the Baptist Church. It's grown a few vines in 14 years. There's Reverend Ely in front of the Methodist Church. The Catholic Church, which celebrated, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm not sure just exactly how long ago, because time has a way of getting away from us, but it's over 100 years old. There was a new church that was built down on Twin Street. And there's the Township Hall, looking a little worse for wear, as we say now. Mr. John Galbraith bought it from the township and donated it back to the village. It's now Galbraith Hall, totally remodeled. There's the Grange, still looking pretty good. And gosh, we bought a new fire truck. And we've got a new firehouse, and there's a new fire chief, Dick Johnson. There's the old truck that was bought in 1938, the GMC. It's a 1950 Ford, and there's the new firehouse right behind it. We go around in front of the firehouse to the city building. And when we look it over, it's a little worse for the wear. And as I say, it was remodeled shortly after and the third story removed. This is looking again down Main Street. There's the cream station. That's Finney Oldham on the left, Roy Bradley. They're tipping their hat, Charlie Phillips. At the cream station. Earlier in the film, I made a mistake and didn't go back and correct it. I said Mo Martin, and it was Mark Miller. But here's Mo Martin's Standard oil, or Shell oil station. There's Eddie Martin. There's Mo. Jim O'Hara. We go down to Stroh-Snyder's Golf Station. We saw it earlier, all remodeled. There's Bill Stroh-Snyder. Jim Dillion was working for him at that time. Now we come back up to, I think this is the Beaver Auto Store, and Mr. and Mrs. Raleigh Reckham. North Walnut Street to the familiar John Murray & Son Lumber, Grain, and Elevator. There's Marjorie Murray. There's John Murray, Cletus Murray, and Paul Lafferty. Cletus says, go right ahead. There's John, in his 90s at that time. And this is Johnson's Implement, where Fisher Cast Steel is today. There's Dick Johnson, Bob Barton, Jasper Craig. There's Dick again, Jasper, and that farmer I've known all my life and still can't say his name. There's Kiefer the jeweler. There's Bill Culp, law office. His secretary, Fay Trustee Murray. We come down to the Gregg building, see the restaurant. G.N. Harper, and the Chicken in a Basket restaurant at that time. Right across the street was Leigh Bradfield, who purchased the Keener Enterprise. We'll see Leigh coming out. There's Wilbur McCoy, and there's Mr. C.F. Keener, who still stayed around and helped with the store. We're looking west on Main Street from the south side, and here's, I told you that bridge broke through, and there's the truck that broke through the bridge. So we got a new bridge on Taylor Blair Road. There's some of the traffic that we used to see before they put in the freeway. And that made quite a change, but a lot of traffic through West Jefferson. That's George Devers. There's Malot's Drugstore, but we don't go into Malot's. We just show you where it is. Of course, it stood on the corner for years. There's Bill McGuire, the chief of police, Herb Allerton, and Homer Braithwaite. There's Everett Ellinger, Ab Wade, Mrs. Ellinger, and Mamie Martin. And one of the young Ellingers. There's a man in front of the saddle shop, and I don't know who that is, although Mrs. Shepherd said her father had a shoe repair, and I don't know whether he was in the saddle business too or not. And there's the Sterling Stores Incorporated, and you saw Joe come out. All the ladies there at the store. Mrs. Woodard, Mrs. Faust, Joe, Bernice Strauss. This guy's just enjoying watching them. McKee Pfefferly. That was the one, that was McKee Pfefferly, and of course we all knew Doc Pfefferly a lot better as time went on, and he was an optometrist here in town for many years. There's the Moore store. Man by the name of Walker from Plain City. Walker and Rill had the Moore store in West Jefferson. That looks a little bit familiar there. I believe the name will be the Vanity Shop. And there's Mrs. Richardson still running the Vanity Shop in 1952. She's assisted by Mrs. Miller. Now we go down to the West Jefferson Sand and Gravel, and there's Sid Stratton. There's some shots down around the gravel pit. A lot of gravel in that pile. A lot of stone was crushed there over the years. There's the crew that worked at Sand and Gravel at that time. Albert Clark was the bookkeeper. There's some farm machinery, and that's at the back of the Case dealer, and that was now Parsons Implement. And we go to the post office. There's Bob Milligan, Mabel McCarty at the post office. I believe that's the electric shop. Yeah, there's Tab and Mrs. Braithwaite. There's Al Burrell. Now we go back to Malot's, and I believe there's Howard Wills. Doc. Mrs. Kessler, of course, was back there, and there's the Morgan brothers, Turner Harriet. We go to Central Garage. As we see Ralph working in Central Garage, and I'm trying to think how many years it was that Mrs. Kessler worked at the drugstore, but over 35 years, I believe. We go down to Dairy Queen. The Dairy Queen at this time belonged to a man by the name of Clegg. There's the shoe repair shop. Mr. and Mrs. Kidwell. I don't know who belonged to that car, but it was getting up in the antique class in 1952. There's Link Seabold. There's Dr. Sheets. Patty Gillivan still working down in front of the hardware store. And there's a familiar white Land Cruiser. I knew that pretty well and got to watch it a couple or three times at the Sinclair station. There's Glenn Webb. Still got Z61 on something, don't you, Glenn? There's the white kitchen. There's the Town and Country Market. Mr. and Mrs. Elsie Reams. There they are. And there's Norma Streeter, who worked for them. Down to the waterworks. There's the quarry. Looking south, and you can see the traffic on Route 40 from the quarry. Now where the water is, there's Howard McKinley, who was in charge of the water department at that time. Howard's going to show us some water. And there's still some fish in that lake, as there were back in those days. There's the West Jefferson building alone. That little house is still in the front window, and Lefty Culp still in the front door. That's Ella Jackson and Mary Wolfe with Lefty. We go down the street a little ways to Doc and Dave's. Doc Chambers and Dave Richardson of Doc and Dave's. There's George Ely. Dale Thompson, Charlie Miller, Jerry Chambers, Mrs. Geyer, that's Betty Geyer, and this young guy I can't nail his name yet. I've looked at this thing about 5 times and still can't nail him. Now we go out to Don Elliott's farm. We're going to look at some more cows. There's Don and Mr. Hutton. Don moved board so it wouldn't look bad in the picture. Look at him. Come right in, there's Ben Edwards grocery store. And there's Steve Sheena. See these people coming out of the stores, but can't. There's Benner. Steve Deach. Steve Sheenus. You name the rest of them. There we are back to Britain's. Or the red and white store, and there's Allison Patterson and people running the red and white, which is still the same store after all these years. still in the same ownership. There's Dorothy Blouser and Joe Ellen. Came out of the drugstore. There's Millard Clark. Now we go down to the new Blouser furniture. There's R.I., Guy, Francis Baker, and Orville Ring. Orville doesn't quite get in the picture, but now we do a flyby here. Guy, Francis Baker, and there went Orville. But they do let Orville show you the new transportation. There he is back in the truck, the van into the furniture store. There's the barber shop with Chewy, Shoemaker, and Mel Neff. Now we're down to the Texaco station. That's Jack Porter, I think, and Charlie Arbage. And there's the new restaurant. It started in town down on the main street right across from the lots and moved out and built a new restaurant, Ann and Tony. There's Ann. I believe that's probably Mike and Tony. Downard Cleaners, Merle Higgins. F. Strother's Garage. Some of the local folks, and I just can't get all the names. I'm sorry. There's Hoyt Graves. I know him. And we move down to there's Jack Harrington. And we go out to the beginning of the Merriman edition, the first few houses that Dick Merriman built out there, the concrete houses. Dick, Al Hance. I believe that looked like Ben Myers on right, but I didn't see enough to know. There's Pete Lovelace and Ralph Ingalls in front of Luff's Appliance. There's Ruth Lovelace. Pete sister. Go down to the highest station in the east end of town. We find two new lube racks inside. Don Sickles is running it now, and he's assisted by Herb Hoover. There's a deer on top of the car, Ralph Barton's car. I don't know whether that's the deer that Ralph paid for twice or not. We'll never know. Just won't tell. There's Sam's Cleaners, and there's Sam. home-cooked food at Martin's Restaurant. There's Mamie Martin, Eva Hunter, Kate Trusty, Jack Bennett, Kathleen Davis. Now we're back to the meat market. There's Byron, Ernie Organbright, going on down to the east side of town, you got Charlie Hay. Charlie, I love that tie. Greg and Hay is still in business. Run by Don and Tim now. And there's Sam and Leona Baber. Sam almost falling on the steps. And then there's Raiders Funeral Home. Harvey Pence. Carl Geyer. Here's the Spring Lake Swim Club, members only. Sonny Malott. There's Judy Hurt. I think that's Bill Buscemi. Jerry Chambers up there on top. And there's some great divers. That was Dick. I believe that's Sonny. There's a couple dives here we won't even discuss. This one in particular. And then Dick's going to show us all how to do a backflip in a minute. It just won't work, fellas. Of course, there's Dr. Hurt and Dr. Gibney again in front of the office. You notice the office has changed, the clothes have changed, the hairdos have changed, but the sign has remained the same. Another shot in front of the office. There's Dr. Gibney showing the latest techniques in drilling on the only guy that could catch, Dick Hurt. There's Virginia Hurt. I haven't figured this out yet. My brother Jim had been in Tennessee since 1944. He came home just in time to get in this film. I don't know whether he knew they were going to do it or not, but he must have been in Dr. Hertz getting a checkup. There you see him leaving the office. There's Martha Moore's beauty shop. Martha. And there's Jack Snyder's Sales and Service, International Harvester Truck Dealer. They all come rolling out of here too fast to give the name. There's George Cale. Les Newell. Bill Taylor. Jack, of course, there's Levi Kent. Now we go over to London to the banks. I guess they didn't have banks there in Jaffa. Well, we did have at that time, but they show the West Jefferson or the London bank people. Mr. McAllister. Jack Phillips there. That's Mr. McAllister. And then we go down to the Central Bank. Bruce Lewis. Bob Caveney. Joe Londergan. Some of the girls there. Mrs. Edwards. E.B. Rayburn's wife, Pat. Now we come back to West Jefferson and Timmins Dairy. Mr. Taylor. Bill Taylor. I believe it was. And some of these other folks I just can't name. There's Betty Timmins, of course Jim Timmins. Jim, Betty, Mr. Taylor. And I believe I recognize that because of that's E. Snyder, I think. gym with a lot of trucks. And there's Blouser and Baker Funeral Home with the new hearse out front. Pulling up to the side. Guy Blouser and Francis Baker. There's the train moving through West Jefferson again, and that shows the passage of time as we move on to the end of the film. We hope that you've enjoyed it and that you'll view it often. And I want to thank you for letting me bring you the remembrances as I remember them of West Jefferson 1938 and 1952.